Okay. So it's become very clear to me that obviously during lockdown, more and more people are going to be turning towards having to sell online. But not only that, that there are people that are setting up, there are people who are taking their redundancy pay and setting up businesses. There are some great entrepreneurs out there, Charlie being one of them, who is looking at sort of growing businesses using online platforms, because that seems to be more and more the way that people are going, and the way that we are shopping in a way to be safe. So it's a big opportunity. So today I've asked Charlotte to help me out to talk about sort of two areas really. First of all is looking at new businesses, and in particular, how do we help them? How do we make them aware of their need for an accountant? How do we help them make some good choices onto how they set things up in their business? Because I've spent the last week and a half looking at all the different opportunities of being able to set up online businesses, and my goodness, is it confusing. Particularly some of the costings and chargings and the way things work can be incredibly confusing. So helping people think that out, but not only just thinking about what's great for their delivery of their sales and services, but also how we can manage the accounting side of that, and make sure it's simple and we can add value to those people. And then on the second side of it is to talk about the existing businesses we have worked with and how we help them change over to e-commerce. I know a lot of people did in the last lockdown. They found ways of selling, but seemed to be mainly through connections through Facebook or small ways of connecting into their local community, which is fantastic. But I think as we move forward, to be honest, I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel that we might be in lockdown a little bit longer than to the 2nd of December. And that moving forward next year, there are going to be more people who want to start trading online. So how do we help existing businesses move their services and products online and get attention, get part of that market share? So there's two things that I want to really sort of address today. If there's anything else, please put it in the chat box and we will try and make sure that we cover it all for you. Okay, so first of all, I think I'd like to ask Charlotte to just talk to you about what her experience is of working with businesses that are focused mainly on working on online sales platform, because I think they're very different to those traditional businesses that we are looking at. Like I said, there are people that have started that are basically just working out of their back bedroom and selling the odd bit on eBay or Etsy or not on the high street, and probably have not really thought that they're running a business as such. They've just got hobby, but that needs managing. But then there are also the entrepreneurs, the people who are really making this business fly for them. So Charlotte, can I pin your picture and let people talk to you? And then people can see you and you tell me about how things have been going with your business, and how you've managed to make this a big part of what you do.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Okay, so this is a bit difficult because I don't think of myself as a specialist. I kind of got into e-commerce by accident while I was living abroad. Now, what I found in the time that I've been doing this is, as accountants, we like processes and we like procedures and we like to have a set way of doing things. Now, the problem with e-commerce is, as Emma said, there are so many different platforms and so many different business models that it's very, very difficult to create a process or have a standard way of dealing with something. So if I think about my client base, for every single e-commerce business that I work with, I have a tailored kind of process for every single one, because nobody uses the same plugins and nobody uses the same apps. Okay, so for example, I might have somebody using Amazon. I might have somebody selling on Amazon, eBay, and their own website. I might have somebody who uses their own website with various plugins that link to other software that gives them different metrics. And so there's kind of an infinite number of permutations and combinations of apps that they are using. So the first thing I'm going to say is you're going to have to be very flexible, and you're going to have to embark on quite a steep learning curve. But once you get there, you know, it's pretty plain sailing. So what I do is I take for each client, when I take them on, I end up writing an individual process for everyone, test it myself for a couple of months, and then hand it over to the people who work with me. Okay, so that's the biggest challenge that I've found while I've been doing this, as Emma well knows, because I rant to her quite a lot about it. One thing that might be helpful, I don't know if Charlie wouldn't mind just diving in, is when I start working with people, I get e-commerce clients two ways. So I have people who are very entrepreneurial minded and they have good processes in place. I then have people who set up as a hobby and it's taken off, and they come to me with a backlog of a year of data because they've suddenly really might be reaching the VAT threshold, and they want me to suddenly recreate some accounts out of this so that they know whether they have to charge VAT or not. So I don't know if Charlie, if you think back to before we were working together, when you and Nick were very first starting, how did you approach your accounting and things like that?
Hi everyone. So me and my business partner Nick started straight away from e-commerce in 2016, and like what Emma said at the start, we sort of started off being that bedroom seller, selling bits online, not really realizing we had a business in a way. We did, but it sort of took off and we probably weren't really prepared for that. So we went from bedroom mentality into where we are today, which is obviously set up as a proper business and everything. But the way we first approached it was we went to just a generalized accountant who were not really set up for it and didn't really have everything in place, and we didn't actually have a bookkeeper to start with. We didn't really even know that we had to collect all our invoices and receipts for the first 6 to 8 months. So that was a bit of tracking back doing that. But I think the problem that we found was that because the technology was so new and the marketplaces were so new, and they were giving people like myself such a good platform to bring in a good amount of sales and build a business, but the knowledge from the accountants and bookkeepers wasn't there to keep up to speed with the marketplaces. So we had quite a lot of problems going through different. We went through 3 different accountants and 3 different bookkeepers as well. And when we came across Charlotte, that was because she said she specialized in e-commerce and clearly understood what our actual requirements were. And she understood the platforms like Amazon, how they all worked, because that's sort of the biggest problem, is that most people like myself starting out have no real idea how accounting works, especially online. And the way Amazon's set up with all its reports and functioning and everything, it's, in my opinion, completely different ballgame to traditional accounting methods and how you extract the data. So it's very difficult, and there's a lot of, I think, conflicting information, especially if you maybe 2 or 3 years ago from accountants and bookkeepers, because like I said, the technology was sort of so new, and there was no making tax digital a couple of years ago and all that type of thing, that I don't think the accountants and bookkeepers were necessarily knowledgeable enough, because it was so new, the type of stuff. So that's what stood out for us with Charlotte, is that actually she knew the Amazon platform and how it all could link together. So that's sort of been our journey. Like I said, we've had 2 or 3 different bookkeepers and accountants, each one just giving conflicting information really, which was the really difficult part. One would say one thing, one would say another, and then you just didn't really know where you stand. So I think that's hopefully getting a little bit better as there's more information and more tools out there now in the past couple of 18 months. But still, I know it's like a big headache for most sellers. So that's sort of where we've got to with things.
Brilliant, thank you. So a lot of what Charlie said is what I've experienced with my other clients as well. So like I said, a lot of them, when they begin, they don't really think of it as a business. So they're thinking of it as a bit of a hobby, something to do in their spare time. If it takes off, then great, they're going to pack in their full-time job and start doing this, you know, as a career. Now, because of that, the first thing that normally happens when somebody comes to me is they basically say, I've been running this business for a year. I don't know how I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know where all my receipts are. And I don't know how to get the reports that tell me what the information is that I need. Now, every single platform, whether it's Amazon, eBay, Shopify, Etsy, whether it's their own website, every single one has a different reporting function. Half the time, they don't even have a section called reports. You know, you find it under settings. I don't know why, it drives me mad. But there are some integrations with Xero and QuickBooks, whether they're third-party integrations or a couple of kind of direct ones. Now, these vary in quality a great deal. So the main one I would think about is getting Amazon sales from Amazon into Xero. You've got three options. You can either use A2X, which is an integration which will bring in all of the invoices, sort out the VAT for you, help you with reconciling the payments. Because I don't know if anyone's experienced Amazon payments. They're fortnightly, which is a nightmare in terms of your accruals accounting. Okay, so there's A2X, which is quite expensive. They also have a Shopify integration, which is supposed to be the best one out there. But then there's also a platform called Link My Books, which will do Amazon and eBay. So there's no consistency between what these add-ons are doing. So some will work with one platform, but not another. They might work with two of the platforms you've got, and then you need a different add-on for something else. So what I'm saying is, depending on what your new client has set up, you're going to have to pick these up really, really quickly. And I think what Emma is doing in terms of getting some resources together is going to be a godsend for most of you. Now, I'm talking a lot about Amazon, but again, there's where we've got businesses who in the lockdown have been trying to go online. Many of them are making their own websites, either through Shopify. Some of them have got bespoke websites, which is a little bit more complicated. Shopify is the main one, and I think it's WooCommerce. Yeah. But again, there are loads and loads of different platforms, and they all try to set them up themselves. So again, depending on whether they've set it up right themselves, because they've got to put in their VAT rules, and if they're selling internationally, you can be sure that the VAT rules are going to need tweaking. I've completely lost what I was going to say then. I think the main thing to remember is all of these platforms, they're going to be able to add you as their accountant, as an extra user. So you're going to need to go in and check a lot of the settings on things like the VAT. Okay. All of these apps as well, they update and they change a lot, as well as new ones coming out all the time. They do change where their reports are, or they'll change how they function. So you're going to keep on top of that. It's not too difficult, they do. I think it's more the volume of things that you're going to get used to rather than the actual doing of it. It's easy enough to be able to teach yourself how to use one integration or how to use one platform. But when you've got 10, 15, 20, you're going to start getting a bit of a headache. So I'm just trying to think what else there was, Emma.
I think the thing that you sort of just quickly sort of almost brushed over was the VAT thing, which is quite a big challenge. And you had an experience of that, didn't you?
Yes. So when it comes to VAT, there are probably two main challenges. So the first one is going to be when your customers are looking at their pricing. So a lot of them, again, they're starting from the back room. They don't even think about VAT when they're looking at the costing of their items. That's something that they really need help with, like whether you can give them a template to help calculate the pricing once the VAT is included. Well, I think the key challenge is thinking about it before they've even started. So a common problem is going to be someone's started, they're selling a product for £10. They're maybe making a 20% net margin on it. But then they come up to the VAT threshold and they think, well, okay, I'm going to register for VAT. But they don't think about, well, if I put my prices up by 20%, then are people still going to buy it? So then they think, well, it's okay, I'll absorb that cost, but then their margin disappears. And this is something that a lot of newer sellers aren't aware of, because with the lockdown and redundancies and furlough and all the rest of it, there are hundreds and hundreds of people trying to open up Amazon businesses or online selling. And they all need to be made aware of this VAT issue. The other problem is going to be the international aspect. So if you've got somebody just selling in the UK, that is absolutely fine. If you've got people selling in Europe, especially with Brexit, I know Charlie's had a bit of a headache with this, I think, but you're going to need, some countries, it doesn't matter, even if you have €1 of sales, you have to register for that in that country. Some countries have a limit when you have to register. Some people, you have to have an agent physically in that country. Now, there are two main companies in the UK who can deal with the international VAT aspect. That's Avask and Avalara. So your clients are going to need to make a decision, because I'm sure you don't all fancy registering as VAT agents in Spain and France and Germany and Czechoslovakia and everywhere else. You can either find agents in each of those countries individually, or you can go with Avask or Avalara. Avask are really, really grossly overpriced. I had one customer paying about £3,000 a year to do. Yeah, was that you, Charlie? I think I had someone paying even more.
Yeah, ours is about €5,500 a year, I think. Yeah. To do all the VAT filing. They've already done the registrations, obviously, but the VAT filing. But I don't know. Yeah, just to jump in there, they were very much worth it in that the options you gave there of Avask and Avalara. I'm sorry if anyone's got any affiliation with Avalara, but I would highly not recommend them. And that's sort of a general feeling across the board and all the forums and all the people who've had experience with them. Whereas Avask, we found, were like absolutely brilliant in terms of setting things up and maintaining things. And we sort of made the decision that we were happy to pay a little bit more each year to go with them. The other company who we sort of know a few of the people work there is Simply VAT, and they can do UK stuff, EU stuff as well, and they're very good as well. But we use Avask. So
brilliant. I'd agree with what Charlie says about Avalara. I can't remember if they're originally an American company or if, I don't know. There's certainly, they weren't English, I don't think. But I found, I would say, out of 5 clients who were working with Avask, I've had VAT investigations on 3 of them, and they've had to pay extra because the VAT wasn't correct. So it's something that you really need to, although somebody else is going to be doing the VAT, and this was the UK VAT that they were doing for them, never mind the European VAT, you're going to need to double check it. Whether it's, you'll be doing most of the bookkeeping anyway, I would assume, but you're going to have to keep an eye on what they're doing to make sure it reconciles. A lot of people aren't reconciling these things regularly, and so it gets to the year end and you realise that actually the VAT is completely out of whack. So it's just something to be conscious of. Another thing that came up recently, just talking about pricing and international selling, was a guy I've been working with who is selling in the States. He doesn't sell anything in the UK, but he's a UK registered company. Now he's incurring VAT on some of his Amazon charges, even though it's Amazon US. So they charge a referral fee per unit you sell. He didn't realize this, and he didn't build it into his pricing, and so he kind of got an Amazon settlement that had VAT deducted from his charges, and his entire margin was eaten up. Now he thought, you know, because he was selling in the US, he wasn't going to have to think about that. And again, there's a lot of advice going around that's not accurate out there. A lot of online sellers tend to use Facebook and LinkedIn groups to communicate, from what I can gather. And everybody in there, it's like, you know, the whole set scenario where you've got the man down the pub and he says, well, my mate does this. It's like that, but 500 times worse, because there's so many of them, all from different countries, all in one group, all on different platforms, all who've got a different accountant, and they've all got a different mate as well who's doing something different. So you're going to have to work through a lot of bad advice, and you're going to have to sit down and give them facts, because one thing I find with working with e-commerce businesses is the kind of people that set these businesses up, they've usually got a really inquiring mind. They're usually very intelligent, and they want to know why they're doing something. They want to have a go at doing it themselves, which is where a lot of problems start to begin with. But they want to be confident that you're giving them the right advice when they've got 100 other people in a group telling them something different. And I think that is half the battle. Once you can get them to listen to you instead of a friend in a group, that's going to really help you to help them grow their business. I'm just looking at my notes here because I think I've got a million things written down.
Can I just jump in a minute? Have you had any experience of, I noticed that on Amazon now, they are actually offering an Amazon VAT service, which supposedly does cover all their different countries, but it does look, I mean, it does look like they probably outsource it, to be quite frank, but.
It does, I think, isn't it outsourced to Avalara, Charlie?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I knew it was
they do have the VAT promotion, though. I presume they're still running that. So where Amazon will offer to pay for all of your VAT registrations and your first year of filing. And you can actually pick whichever company you want to do that with. So there's a choice of like Avast or Avalara or whoever.
Right.
So I think that was, like I said, about maybe €5,000 in the first year. And Amazon actually gave us that money physically into our bank account to cover the bill for that. And then when it came to the second year for the renewal, it was up to us to cover the cost. But that's something worth pointing out for sellers that may not be aware of that, because that's obviously like a huge saving. And yeah, so it might be worth pointing out.
That is a fantastic saving. One thing to bear in mind, though, is that they do have a 3-month notice period. So if they're a little seller and they were using this service, their business maybe hasn't taken off, or they're not doing so well, to suddenly be confronted with this bill, which I have had happen, and then be told, well, we've got a 3-month notice period, so you're going to have to pay a quarter of it at least. I've had that where a couple of sellers haven't been able to pay it. And then they've not known what to do, because then all like that, it's, you know, they're completely stuck. They don't know where to turn with that. But like I say, the year promotion is very, very popular. And I think most people tend to take them up on that. Just thinking about other issues that crop up, especially around this time of year, or January specifically, is there's going to be a lot of work around cash flow. So, for example, if you have a new seller, they've been preparing all year, they've launched product maybe around maybe September time, thinking that they're going to get ready for the fourth quarter, ready for Christmas, and their product is selling well because it's a busy time of year. They get all of this cash coming in. Many of them forget that they might have tax or VAT liabilities in January and February, and all of that cash that they've made, they've not been keeping records because they've not been thinking it's a proper business, and they don't know where they're up to. They've thought, brilliant, we're selling really, really well, we're going to invest in a shitload more stock. Sorry, pardon my language. A lot more stock. And we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And we're going to draw some of it out because we deserve to treat ourselves because we've been really successful. So they do all this, they spend all the cash, and then the VAT bill comes. This happened with my first ever e-commerce client. They'd had their most successful quarter. They'd been trading about a year, the most successful quarter ever. And at the end of it, they'd invested in so much stock, which then got delayed in China. They had £3,000 left in the bank, and all of a sudden they had a VAT bill for about, I think it was about £15,000, which to them was a vast sum. And they didn't know what to do. And then they were thinking, well, you know, nobody wanted to buy the stock because it was then January, February, and nobody was really buying presents at that time of year. And it was a huge hole to dig them out of, because the problem just kept compounding itself. So they'd make a few sales, they'd take the cash from that and offset it against their debt, but then they'd need to buy more stock, but then they couldn't. And it was just a really horrible cycle, and it took us about 18 months to dig them out of that hole, which, even though it wasn't a massive debt to begin with, they didn't believe in borrowing money, so they wouldn't take any money or a loan to pay it off. And it was just a whole case of doing their cash flow on a really regular basis, to make sure that they could keep selling but still repay what they owed from that successful period, which they, so the cash flow is really, really important. And a lot of the cash flow software that you might have tried, Fluidly or Spotlight, or there was another one I tried recently, I can't get a single one of them to fit in with either Amazon's fortnightly system or eBay paying. They've now started doing weekly settlements. Before, they were using PayPal. So when you've got all different platforms all paying you in a different way, trying to figure out the cash flow is quite hard. And it can be quite time consuming. So when you think about your costing, you're probably going to have to build that in and think about how much time you're going to spend on doing that in Excel. I tend to, like I say, I've tried most of the even Float I've even tried, but I can't get any of them to work. So what I do is dump all of the data from Xero and stick it into Excel. And at one point I was doing this daily because she was that stuck. Now we do it once a week, which is still a headache, but we got there. And the third common problem that you're going to have after the VAT and cash flow is going to be about stock management. So if they're an Amazon seller, it's fine, you know, assuming they're using fulfillment. It does have its own issues with stock getting lost, or Amazon deciding that it's not sellable, or whatever reason. That, you know, there are problems around that. It's a different conversation entirely. But if they've got their own website, or if they're using Shopify or any other way of selling, they need some kind of stock management system, and they need to be counting stock regularly. Well, you all know what it's like when you've got stock. You need to keep on top of it. And most e-commerce businesses that I've come across don't, or not to begin with at least. So I've worked with somebody who, he had a warehouse, and he would buy, you know, if Tesco were running a promotion and they'd sell something really, really popular, really cheap, he'd go to Tesco and he'd buy all of them. Then he'd flog them on Amazon or eBay. But he'd buy them and he'd stick them in a warehouse. Now, his warehouse got burgled and half his stock got stolen, but he didn't know how much stock he had in the first place. And he couldn't file an insurance claim because he couldn't prove what he had. And when it comes to looking at how they're doing, because they don't know how much stock they've got, they can't do an accurate P&L. They can't say what their margin is. So again, stock management is something that I've had to, I mean, luckily I was quite clued up on that anyway, but stock management is something that they've needed a lot of help with, in terms of counting it and controlling it when they've got it, but also in terms of knowing what to order and when to order it. So there's a massive difference. If somebody does run out of stock, if their daily sales suddenly increase, and they've got a 60-day lead time normally from China, but all of a sudden they're selling a lot more than they expected, and so they're going to have to replenish in time. They're going to have to get it by air freight. the cost is going to be about double what it would be if not more, if they ordered it by sea freight. And again, it's never built into the pricing, or it's rarely built into the pricing for emergencies like that. So a lot of work that I do is around monitoring how stock is selling, which lines are the most popular, what their daily consumption rate is, and building that again into a beautiful Excel spreadsheet to see when they're likely to run out and when they're likely to need to reorder. Okay. So I think they're probably the three biggest challenges that I find. Otherwise, they're fine to work with.
Can I just go back a step, because you mentioned fulfillment by Amazon.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been seeing quite a lot of stuff on Facebook and around place. You know, these people who claim to be making millions by selling on Amazon, and they have this great a little bit of calculation that they do, which was making me laugh, that Charlotte's been thinking about costing, you know, because they'll, one of the examples they gave was, you know, like if you sell something for £13, Amazon fee will be like £1.95. The fulfillment by Amazon, which is the stock holding and shipping, will perhaps be £2.40. The product cost might be £2.50. Suddenly you've made £6 plus for doing virtually nothing. But again, what they hadn't thought of was, like you said, all this other stuff that you've been mentioning, Charlotte, that they don't sort of take into account. And so they're selling these great opportunities where you can make, like, you know, 100% profit on something without physically having to do anything yourself. But I was thinking that perhaps we need to, one of the resources that I want to create for you as members is about actually tapping into those people who respond to those sort of marketing messages to give them some reality checks. Because even though I did attend a webinar by a lady who promises the earth as far as selling on Amazon, and even though all through her slide she put, these are not normal numbers, the numbers she was showing were phenomenal compared to the little note at the bottom that said this is not a normal outcome type thing. And people will be looking for that at the moment. Like you said, there's a lot of people who are being made redundant, a lot of people are going to be needing to find an income from somewhere, who will use their redundancy pay, you know, to set this up. So I think perhaps understanding a little bit about the fulfillment by Amazon is quite important to understand that, because again, if you go on Amazon's website, that's a big selling point that they're doing. It does make life massively easier. I can understand that. But like you just said, you know, I wasn't really aware that Amazon could choose to decide that stock was not worth holding anymore, or things like that. And I know that the costs are per foot area of storage space you use, but also there is a percentage that they charge to keep stock, holding stock. So your controlled stock thing is quite incredibly important, isn't it? Even if you're using something like fulfillment by Amazon.
Yeah, it is. And especially now with the coronavirus, because Amazon have reduced the amount of stock you can keep in the warehouse. That's right, isn't it, Charlie? I'm pretty certain that's what, I think it's, I don't remember what the volume is now, but most people are holding a lot less stock in the Amazon warehouses, and they're having to go to third-party stock, well, warehouses basically. So I've forgotten what I was going to say again. Yeah, so like Emma says, that is really, really important. And the cost of actually, like she says, all of these people, because there's a million gurus out there allegedly who are going to tell you how to make a small fortune on Amazon. Now, in my experience, the total Amazon fees, so we're talking fulfillment, referral fees, advertising fees, other random fees that I'm never actually quite sure what they are, they tend to make up 35 to 40% of the product price. So when people are saying, well, you've only got this and you've got that and you've got £1 for this and £1 for that, once you actually total it, and then you've added the duty and the VAT coming into the country, then you've added the packaging, a decent product margin or a decent gross margin for an online seller, I'm finding at the minute, is probably about 35 to 40%. I do have a report somewhere and I've just lost it, which shows the actual kind of benchmark figures. Let me just see if I can find it.
The thing people probably don't account for the most when they start is the advertising costs, because they're like you cut the PPC, they call it, the pay per click. So it's not, you get charged every time someone clicks on your listing. If you're paying for advertising, you don't get charged when they buy. It's just if they even just click it and click off it. And because the competition's increasing so much with more sellers coming on, the cost of that click might be 50p, 80p, a pound or something like that. And if you imagine your conversion rate, you mean a good conversion rate, maybe like 20%. If you've got a cost per click of, say, I don't know, like 50 pence per click, and you're only selling 1 in 5, that you've got to account for that in your margin. And some categories are a lot more competitive than others, but it's you know, some of them, like supplements markets, might be like £5 a click, literally. So it's worth just trying to factor that in. Obviously your costs come down over time, your advertising costs come down over time, but you've got to have the money up front to be able to afford to pay that to launch your product. So worth mentioning when it comes to costs.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, sorry, I've just found my benchmarking report now. Best practice gross profit margin for 2019 for small e-commerce businesses was 38%, and the operating profit margin, this is best practice small e-commerce businesses, was 4.75%. So when you've got these people who are saying you're going to make millions overnight, people want to believe them because, you know, this is a really difficult year, but the reality is far different. Now, the average for small companies was a gross profit margin of about 29%, average operating profit margin of 3.25%. Okay, so it is really tight, and that's why it's important to get these three things. To make your customer understand how important the cash flow, the stock control, and the pricing is, and how important the record keeping is. You know, nobody wants to do the boring stuff when they're launching a new product. Nobody wants to think about putting all their data into Xero. They're going to be really grateful to you if you take that away from them, from what I can gather. But you need to emphasize how important this is to them, because I think they do get caught up in how exciting it can be. This month, and I've done this and I've done that. Then you've got all these gurus going, wow, you're going to be rich, you're going to do this, you can buy yourself a yacht next year. But then they actually start and it's a real slog, and they start to get demoralized, but they've still not done any records, so they don't actually know how they're doing or how they can improve. So that's the main challenge that I find has been facing everyone. Getting the information to them, making them realize the importance of the three main areas, and just encouraging them, because it can be difficult first, but if they stick with it, and if you produce regular reports for them so they can see how they're doing, and just like try and help them tweak things, or, you know, just increase the margins by a fraction, then it will make all the difference to them. And I think if you can explain this in a way that is simple and not accountant speak, because one common complaint I've always had is that people don't actually understand what their accountant's been telling them. Because a lot of these people, they're not from a business background either. You get people from all walks of life doing this. Half the time, they're not going to know what you're talking about. So it's just important to be encouraging and to be clear, and to be as supportive as possible, as much as we tend to do anyway. Because there are huge amounts of highs and lows. They'll start off really, really excited, and then a month later they'll be really depressed, and then they'll be really hyper again. Then it's Christmas and they're over the moon, and then it comes to January and February and the figures go down again. So it's cyclical, I can't even say cyclical, whatever, seasonal. You know, there's lots of ups and downs, there's lots to learn, but it is actually worth it. You know, every e-commerce business that I've worked with, they're still going, they're doing better, and well, with the coronavirus, things are doing a lot better.
Thank you. I think I think what I just wanted to just perhaps add a few extra bits, and then you can just interrupt me, please, whenever you want to, Charlotte and Charlie, because obviously I'm learning some of this stuff too. But there were a few things that I wanted. I mean, I've just learned some extra stuff from you already, Charlotte, so thank you very much. I think it really, there's a decision really to be made, isn't there, about how much you want to get involved with this. But I think it's something that's going to happen. So as an accountancy practice, we do need to start learning this stuff and get a handle on it. And I'm not expecting you as the accountancy partner to understand everything initially. I think it's quite possible that you've got people in your team that would love to spend hours working all this stuff out and get excited about it and become your specialists in this area. And so if it's something that you personally don't feel, I can't get my head around this, then please look at your team and get them involved, because I think we have to be looking at this and having to look at this. Now, I think Charlotte's come up with a couple of really important things, that the pricing is really, really critical for people because they do not understand it. And we've talked about Amazon mainly because they are pushing themselves as a platform. But as Charlie's mentioned, the competition on that platform is getting massive, particularly when you're competing against businesses across the world now. You know, like we said, we can sell to the US and to wherever else, but they can sell to us too. So there's that combination of things. Having looked at some of the other websites, I think you need to be really clear, the other platforms, about getting to look at fees, because some of them, I've been on that website and it's just like a long list of, this is what you could do for this is what you do for that. And like Charlotte says, it adds up massively. So they need to think about that. I was really fascinated because a lot of them, they talk about perhaps having a fee of maybe, you know, a sort of quite a small percentage per transaction. But then there's a lot of hidden stuff, which is what we're talking about. Not on the high street, which is one that I obviously are advertising quite a lot at the moment. They actually have a setup fee, which is £199, but then they charge 25% commission, which seems blinking massive to me, particularly for the sort of businesses that they're dealing with, which are bespoke, handmade stuff mainly. So that's quite, so again, it's thinking about that. For those businesses that are out there, I think we've got an opportunity to support these people and help them. And like Charlotte said, the cash flow is quite critical for them. And I think what Charlotte's experienced, and she may tell me that's wrong, is that actually these can be profitable clients for us. I know what she's been talking about, it sounds like there's a huge amount of hard work to look after these people, but they are appreciative of it.
Yeah, I think what I would say is the first 2 or 3 months are for each client. I'm not saying the first 2 or 3 months of dealing with e-commerce in general. For each client is a really steep learning curve. But once you've got over that, when you've made a loss for the first 2 or 3 months, after that, you should be okay. And it is hugely rewarding, and it is a fantastic sector to work with. You know, the kind of people you're going to end up working with. I don't know, they're just, in my experience, everyone that I've worked with in this sector has been just lovely. They've got a vision of why they're doing what they're doing. There's a reason they're selling online instead of going to a 9-to-5 job. They've usually got a vision that they tend to be the kind of people that are going to resonate with the kind of people who work for AVN, who work with AVN. And sorry, you've just reminded me of one thing, Emma, before I forget, is the actual technicalities of the bookkeeping. I ran into this with Xero recently. I didn't know that there was limits at which Xero can't handle large volumes of data. So certain limit of contacts, certain limit of transactions. And if you've got someone selling, eBay was the biggest issue up until recently, where people were paying with PayPal. And if you linked up your PayPal feed, some businesses, when they set up the automatic bank rules, it was creating a new contact for every single sale. If you think you've sold 20,000, suddenly Xero isn't going to be very happy with you. And it's just something that you need to think about, check your bank rules and any other automation to make sure that you're not going to exceed some of the limits in Xero. Otherwise, it's not fun.
Okay, so Stephen's put it's the same for QuickBooks. They have transaction volumes that they struggle with too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important, isn't it, to think about that. So what is the opportunity there? What can we do about that? I mean, is that literally just the way we set up the process? Or
I think it's just around education. So make sure that your team know that they're aware of this, because I wasn't aware of it. I've been using Xero since it was first launched in the UK. I had no idea that there was a limit on how well it would work. So if it's up to about 10,000 contacts, it's going to be fine. Any more than that, Xero might work okay, but the integrations that it's got might not work. And PayPal transactions in particular, so the volume of bank transactions, make sure your team know. And if you've got a client doing the bookkeeping themselves, make sure they know. One particular person that I work with, we've actually had to kind of cancel the PayPal feed, and we just put in a journal for the totals and reconcile it manually.
right.
It's just something to be aware of. So I think education is really important.
That's important, because you mentioned earlier about A2X and Link My Books and some of the other products that can help with some of this stuff, because I think when it all started, we didn't really have any links at all. And I know that some apps are trying to catch up with this. So I guess we also have to be on the lookout, because they will help us as well as the client to try and manage it. Because like you said earlier, some of the reporting on some of these platforms is absolutely shocking.
Definitely. And I actually have Charlie to thank for introducing me to Link My Books, because up until then, I was putting a lot of clients, I was putting the fortnightly statements in manually. And I think so long as you sign up with Xero, you can get, with their newsletters, when they'll tell you what new integrations are coming up. Keep an eye on the Facebook groups that sellers are using, and that way you can kind of keep on top of what new apps are coming in that might help you.
Brilliant.
Sounds like I think probably the feel of the call is that it's been quite like, oh, you've got to deal with this, you've got to deal with that, and there's all these obstacles. But I think in reality there are the tools out there to help you, and it's not a case of all these problems. Like we said with Link My Books, you can, I mean, I don't do the bookkeeping, so I don't know. Charlotte may correct me here and knows the background of what she has to do each month, but the tools like HubDoc, we started using that recently. We use like platforms like TransferWise for all the international payments and setting up our international bank accounts. So the tools are out there to help you to link it all together. And yeah, I think it's just like we said, talking to the right people and talking to the right people to educate yourselves on it first, because the most important thing is when you come to a seller, or I come to you, is that you know the ins and outs of it, of what's going on. Because like I said, there's so much misinformation and conflicting stuff that you just need to sort of know what you're talking about. And like, if you've got that suite of tools set up and ready, it's quite transferable between each client, I presume. Every client who's selling on Amazon should really be using, say, one of these tools like Link My Books, and that's like a package that you can then sell out to and put forward to each client. It's not like a bespoke thing for everyone. For each Amazon seller should be using it. So I just don't want it to sound too doom and gloom. And, it is all doable.
It's definitely doable. I think one thing that clients don't see is a lot of the apps. So if I take Link My Books as an example, this is a fantastic app and it saves me a hell of a lot of time every month. But just as an example, say I've got a fortnightly settlement from Amazon, so that's going to cover sales for a 2-week period. It goes into Link My Books. Link My Books creates a sales invoice and imports it into Xero for you to approve, which is brilliant because it sorts all of the VAT out. Now, the issue that crops up is it puts the invoice date as the start of the 2-week period. So what happens in Xero is then you've got sales on, say, the 14th of November. or a sales invoice for the 14th of November, but half of those transactions don't actually occur until maybe the 29th or the 30th. So you're going to be fiddling around with accruals and prepayments quite a bit. And I was just going to think of another one, but it's just gone out of my head. Not a good morning for that. Yeah, so that's kind of thing. There are tools, there are integrations that are fantastic, but just the actual, if you want to do the accounting properly, because many of these people don't use accruals accounting, you're going to have to convert it from cash accounting when they come to you, if they've got bookkeeping at all. And sorry, that's the other thing. That is a brilliant thing that Charlie says, and that is what I would love to do, is to be able to have a package. So I can go to a new Amazon seller and say, okay, sign up with me and we're going to do this, this, this. You're going to use Xero, you're going to use Link My Books, you're going to use this, that, and the other. Unfortunately, at the moment, most people have set this up themselves and had a go, and then they want you to take over what they've done and try and just make it work. So I suppose at the moment, when I take someone on, I'm thinking about, can I make this work, or should I scrap it and start from scratch?
I think from your guys' perspective, from your guys' business perspective, it's the scalability of things. Like, it's not realistic for you guys to say, right, we've got 30 different clients and I'm going to do accounting 30 different ways, using 30 different tools. It's like, I don't think it's scalable. You need, like, you almost need to force the seller to say, look, this is the right way to do it. If you're working with us, this is how we do it. This is a software that we use. And that's going to be the right way to do it. So I think it's too difficult to try and put something bespoke together for every single person and try to meet their needs in a way. That'd be my view anyway.
Thank you, Charlie. So we've spent a lot of time, I think, thinking about businesses that go direct to e-platforms, but I just want us to spend probably the last 10 minutes so just looking at existing businesses and how we help them move over to selling on platforms. Now, it's slightly different because those businesses do already have obviously some sort of form of marketing, PR place in the business community. So it's how do they move on? Because most of them have just basically got a shop window for their websites. Most of them, haven't they? And one of the things we need to think about is first of all, how do we help them package what they do so that they can put that onto a website? Because we're not just talking about products here, are we? We're talking about all sorts of things. We can't just ignore all those people who actually his job is service focused or as is in a delivery of something else. But how do we help them package that, and how do we help them then promote themselves either through their website but also through other forums? So what I'm noticing is it's quite a lot of businesses that either go and build their own sales platform using Shopify or Wix, or the other two I've found are Square Online and Squarespace that seem to be the ones that people build into, or they actually create almost like business sections on Amazon, because you can create like a little business platform so that when you put something in there, it tells you your company name. You can click on the company name and it opens basically a shop for your business as well. And again, I think one of the things we need to think about is helping people work out what's involved in doing this, because there's not only the cost of whatever platform you choose to use and all the rest of it, but as Charlotte found out recently when she set up her husband's business on Amazon, there is an awful lot of work as far as getting images uploaded, descriptions uploaded, information uploaded that somebody needs to help, remind them that this work needs to be done. And how do you focus on that? So do you remember, we've been talking quite a lot about helping clients work out what are their most profitable products, helping them work out what are the things that they could perhaps uplift prices on because they know that product will still sell. Now, obviously, once you get online, it's a much more competitive marketplace, especially in something like Amazon. But we need to think about, if they're going to start building their own online shop, which products should they put on first? If you've got a catalogue of 3,000 products, we haven't got time to sit there and put them all on before you launch your website. Okay, you'll be dead and gone as a business before that happens. So helping people work out, okay, what are the top products that you sell? Let's get them on. We need to have a website that allows us to continually be adding stuff, changing stuff, doing stuff. So I think it's really important. And again, these, as Charlotte's mentioned, I'm planning to release a load of resources hopefully before the end of the month, of things that we can do with that. But it'd be interesting to find out, Charlotte, if you've had any experience with that, or anybody else, about helping existing businesses go online.
That's probably one thing that I've not actually done yet, because most of I think I'd started working with e-commerce people about 2-3 years ago. So I've not had any experience directly of businesses who I've been working with who've chosen to move online. Now, from a personal experience, some of the people locally in our town, like local shops, people like that, a lot of them, very small retailers, they can't afford half of the costs of building a website, building a store, or they're not aware of the opportunities or the possibilities for themselves. And so a lot of them are actually they're doing like live things in Facebook groups. Just saying, like, for example, there's a boutique down the road. She goes online every Saturday evening at a certain time, and she gets all of her friends to walk through wearing different things out of the shop. So some people are doing it like that, but then they're paying. The problem they've got then is how people are paying, because a lot of it's now cash, because it's just somebody buying it, and because of the lockdown, they're having to go kind of to their house, or they're not being able to. It's all just a bit strange. And I think I have actually spoken to her, and I don't think she was aware that she could actually set up something on Shopify. So a lot of very small businesses who, they're just small town people, they might not understand that this is available to them. And especially if they're a little bit older and they're not used to spending a lot of time online, don't actually realize how reasonable sometimes the prices are to set up a Shopify store, for example. So I've not had to do that, thankfully, but I think if I was to do it, I would have to try and make people aware of what is out there. So by us being aware of what the possibilities are, then we can help people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I thought, we've only got 2 minutes, so I just wanted to just bring it together, really, which is that, yes, there is a lot of things to learn about, but I think it's a massive opportunity. I think there are going to be businesses out there that, in order to get through the next 6 months, 12 months, we need to get them online. We need to be helping them think not just about being price competitive, but being profitable with it, to think about that, be really clear about some of those things, and think about what other services we can offer. So like Charlotte's been talking about, the cash flow thing is critical. They might be using something like Simple Stuff That Works to actually give them some real thought process about when they're making these pricing decisions, what they need to think about. And also thinking about what we can do to make life easy for both parties. So looking at products, looking at services, finding out, just like with any other client, we need to have a bit of a discovery session here. But for our existing clients, again, there's quite a lot of them that have taken bounce back loans. There's no reason why we can't get them to use part of that loan to build their websites. Make sure, though, that we have some sort of measuring process in there. So like Charlotte says, they've got a handle on their numbers all the time, because, we need to help these people move forward with this. My plan is, over the next couple of weeks, is to create a series of different resources, some to help you just connect with people out there who may be thinking of starting businesses, or have, and may be falling foul of some of these things that Charlotte's been talking about. I know Charlotte's already got some stuff she's already doing on that. I'm not asking you to share it, Charlotte. I'm just saying that there are thoughts about to do that. But also then, how do we as accountants engage with these people, and what can we do to be helping them and helping us to both be profitable working through this? So please look out for those resources. Like I said, probably by the end of the month. And I'd like to really thank Charlotte and Charlie for how much you've given us as far as your knowledge and thoughts, because it's been absolutely invaluable. So if you would like to put in the message box, please, your thank yous to Charlotte and Charlie, because you have been absolute stars. Next week, again, I have a guest speaker. I have somebody from a tool called Corona Eye coming in, who would like to talk to you about a free service that they would like to offer you. So I'll send you some information about that before next week's training. But thank you, Charlie. It's been an absolute joy to meet you. I hear so much about you from Charlotte, and it's all wonderful. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and good to meet you all. Good luck to everyone, and it'll be worth it, I promise. So.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. And thank you very much, Charlotte. You have been absolutely wonderful sharing.
If I'll just say, if anybody does have any random queries or anything they need help with, then I'm very happy. Just well, we're all in the Facebook group, so if anybody has any questions, you're very welcome to ask me if there's anything you're not clear of. But just going back to what Emma's saying about how we think this is going to become more important, just because I like my statistics. In 2019, face-to-face sales in shops fell by 2.4%. Okay, but e-commerce online spending rose 3.8%, and that trend is just going to continue, especially with the coronavirus. So it is something that I think all of you need to get a handle on. And if I can help in any way, and like I say, with Emma and her resources, I'll contribute as much as I can. So if anyone needs any help, then just shout.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Charlotte. That's been really useful. And thank you, everybody, for coming. And I will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Thank you. Bye.